Leet code question 58, length of last word. Given a string S consisting of words and spaces, return the length of the last word in the string. So you're given something, a string like this, hello world, and you want to get the length of this guy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So length of this would be 5, and the length of this, you want to get the last word, the length of this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, moon. One of the interesting scenarios here though is that there's a lot of white spaces here, but all we want is that one word at the end. So all this white space over here, we don't want to count it. So we need to account for that, and that's pretty much all we have to account for this. So how would we go about doing this? Well, what we could do is loop through each word. Once we encounter a white space, then we store the length of that word into a box. So this is 3. Go to the next word, and then we replace that with 2. Go to the next word. Go to the next word, and then after that, once we reach the end there, we'll replace the very last one with our number here. However, instead of going from front to back, we can just go back to front. So we can start here, and the very first element that we see is going to be our last word, and therefore we can just count it. The only problem is there's these white spaces in the end. So how do we account for that? Well, we can say that if a word, we can loop through this and say if a word isn't a white space, so as long as the letter is in a white space, then we'll increase our increment. So let's say our increment is 0, and we're over here. Do we see a white space? Yep. So we go to the next one. Do we see a white space? Yep. Do we see a white space? Yep. Do we see a white space? No. So there's no white space. So we can increment this by 1, and then here increment by 2, 3, 4, and then once we see a white space again, we can just end our program, and this is going to be our output. So that is one way of doing that. So how would we code that? Oops. So how would we code that? So first of all, we need a counter, right? So count is equal to 1, and that's this counter over here that I horribly drew over there. So we need a counter, and then we need to reverse for loop, or we need to go through the string in reverse. So we can say for I in range length of s is our string, -1 start, stop, and then the step, and then we can say, okay, if si is not equal to a white space. So this is like saying, okay, so as long as it's not a white space, so this is a white space, this is a white space, this is a white space, this is not a white space. So as long as it's not a white space, what are we going to do? We're going to increase our count by 1. Otherwise, count, return count. So otherwise, once we meet a white space, meet a white space and the count is not 0, so that's what this means, and then just return the count. We do this because let's say that it's still a white space, right? It's still a white space, and it goes to this condition. We haven't started counting yet, so therefore this will never be run. However, as long as something's been counted, we can return our count, because this condition means that we've reached the end right here, this white space. So that is solution number 1. And let's test that out. So that's 4, so that makes sense. 1, 2, 3, 4 for moon. And let's say we add a bunch of white space here, and it's still going to be 4. Okay, now there's another easier way to do this, but it uses a lot of Python's built-in functions, and I think if you're going in for an interview or something like that, it might be cheating. I'm not sure, but here's another really simple way to do this. All you need to do is split the string. So s.split. And what does split give us? Let's print this out. If we print this out, and that's not what I meant to do. String.split. There we go. So fly me to the moon. What it does is it gets rid of all the white space everywhere, and it only takes the words. So what can you do to get the very last word? Well, you just reach its -1 index. So that's just moon there. And then after that, you want to get the length of that, and the length of that is 4. So at the end of the day, you can just return this one line of code, and you get the answer 4. So it's the same thing. However, I'm pretty sure the other way is what's recommended. So that is a solution to LeetCode question 58.